All right. Hello, welcome. It's Thursday afternoon at 3 o'clock Eastern, so that means it's time for Live at Epiphan. I'm George.
And I'm Dan.
And today we have a great topic that we want to discuss, but first, as always, please, any comments, questions, all those things, put them in the various things. We're live on YouTube and Facebook right now. Choose your preference.
My preference is YouTube. 1080p right now.
Yeah, well, it does have those advantages.
Or 4K.
Not today. But,
Not today, but it's possible.
Yeah. So what are we talking about today?
So today we're actually going to be talking about USB video capture cards, like this one, the AVIO 4K. So we're going to sort of knock down the 5 W's, the who, what, where, when, why, and how. I guess that's an H. All about USB video capture cards.
Exactly.
So if you have any questions about video capture cards, this is the time to ask them.
Yeah.
And George, you're quite an expert on this subject, so be interested to hear your knowledge on this.
Yeah, and this is a pretty big topic, so I don't know, get your popcorn and your snacks and stuff and settle in. But definitely this is one that does deserve a lot of questions, so please don't hesitate to throw them in there, and we'll do our best with the time we have.
But before we get into that topic, we do have a few news items we wanted to cover. First of all, wanted to let you guys know we have recently launched the Epiphan Community Forum. So if you go to epiphan.com/forum, we actually have a really great forum there to discuss all things video, whether it's video capture devices like these capture cards. We can talk about the Webcaster X2, Pearl. Our experts are there in the forum to answer any of your questions, to interact. It's a great place also just to share some best practices as well as share your streams if you want to show off what you've been doing lately. It's a great place for that. So please check it out at epiphan.com/forum. Also, Epiphan U. This is a new video series that we just launched, and you can see the first video on our YouTube channel. It's going to be a great place to learn all kinds of in-depth topics about how to do certain things with many of our Epiphan products, guides. If you want to learn how to do all of the little things with layouts, learn how to live stream, learn how to make the most out of all of your technology, Epiphan U is going to be a great series. So we're going to have coming out, I think, every week on Wednesday. Yeah, and there will be a YouTube playlist that you can check to stay on top of everything that's happening with Epiphan U.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that because it, in some ways, hopefully will make my job easier because we'll have these pre-recorded pieces on showing you guys how to do a lot of the little ins and outs. And so I think it would be great to be able to share that with our customers.
Yeah, I'm definitely really looking forward to it as well.
And it's been something people have been asking about for a long time. So we're doing it. It's coming. Keep an eye out. Last bit, NAB New York. That's coming up October 18th and 19th. Epiphan will be there with all the various different pieces of equipment along with our staff. So if you're in New York, planning on attending, or now maybe you are, definitely stop by, check us out. We'll have a booth there with all our different equipment, and we can chat with you about your projects, how to use our equipment, and what might fit the best. So NAB New York.
Excellent. Yeah, NAB New York. That's going to be a great event.
Yeah.
So why don't we dive into our main topic? So we're going to be talking about USB video capture cards. And, I'm sort of familiar. I've seen these around the office.
I would hope so.
These little, I don't even know how to describe the shape. They're like little handheld portable devices and different colors.
Yeah. And
there's more to it than that, obviously.
A lot more. And that's the purpose of today's show, is to really dive into that. And so when we were looking at this topic, we wanted to kind of structure it from, I was thinking about, how do we talk about these? And the best way I could think of was almost from a journalist perspective and take the W5 approach. The who, what, when, where, why. And we're going to have to put the how in there as well. So that's basically how we're going to try and break this down. So Epiphan has been making capture cards for a long time. It's how the company really started in its early history. We were one of the first companies to have a USB-based capture card and definitely a VGA-based USB capture card a long time ago. Obviously, as technology has evolved, so have our products. And so we have a whole big line now for different signal types that are available. But who are these products for? What do you use them for? That's the biggest question. And I think your, kind of curiosity when you see these devices is quite normal. And a lot of people look at it and go, okay, but why? So to start with, I guess we'll talk about our AVIO line of products because they are some of the easiest to use. And so from a who perspective, who uses a capture card and what is a capture card? So a capture card is anything where we're going to take a video signal, maybe from a camera like my Logitech G20 sitting here, and bring it into a computer. Now that could be with USB, as these examples we have up here are. That could be a PCI Express card installed in a desktop. There's a lot of ways that term capture card could be applied. Today, USB is becoming one of the more primary interfaces for this because laptops are really taking over as people's primary computer.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the internal capture cards, I used to see them around a lot more in computer stores and that, but you know, you can't put a PCI card into a laptop.
Exactly. And the other reason is that with newer, more modern bus technologies like USB 3, Thunderbolt, and these other things, we now actually have the speed over these external connections to do a really good job. It used to be that just wasn't feasible. So the other nice part that adds to is obviously portability, and that's sort of some of these things. So who would use a capture card? Well, anybody that needs to get a video signal into their computer. It's as simple as that.
And that could be any video signal. I mean, right now we've got a camera sitting here, but it doesn't have to be a camera. It could be anything that produces, it doesn't even have to necessarily be video. It could be just a PowerPoint presentation or something.
Exactly, or specialized equipment. And that's the beauty of these. Now, choosing the right model for the video signal you intend on capturing is important, and that's why you see so many different variants here. But if I need to capture maybe the output from a camera or maybe the output from a different computer, then I would look at using a capture card to get that into my computer. What I do with it from there is almost a separate subject, and we'll definitely touch on that and show you some examples. But from the basics, that's what they're for. They're for anyone who needs to get the video signal into here. Mm-hmm. Now, one of the common things I run into a lot is people say, yeah, but my laptop has an HDMI port on it. Why would I need this? Well, because that's an output. It's not an input.
Yeah.
So without this, you have no way of getting the video signal in here. Computers do not come with video signal inputs.
Why is that?
Well, it's not necessary for 99% of the people, but also it's cost prohibitive, right? I mean, it's a totally different technology for input versus output. Mm-hmm. And so it wouldn't really make sense to integrate it into a laptop. You're adding extra pieces that most of the people buying it aren't going to use. Building in a webcam is one thing, but this is a totally different piece.
There's also a lot of different kinds of video signals, right?
Yes, and that's which one do you choose? So some of the examples we have up here, if we look at the AVIO, its third brother isn't on the table at the moment, but we have 3 different variants of the AVIO family. The first one is the AVIO HD. We also have the AVIO SDI and the AVIO 4K. Breaking those down, it's really, they all function essentially the same with different inputs. And you'll see this with any capture cards. What video signal input does it have? With the HD model, it has a DVI-I interface on it. This means that we can take, using simple adapters like this one, we can take in HDMI, VGA, or DVI. So with one device, I can support a very wide range of different signals. So this can be a very, very flexible tool.
That's pretty cool. So, I mean, this is the DVI input, but that's very easy to adapt it into, with one of these adapters. I've got probably 5 or 6 of these myself. But now it's HDMI.
Exactly.
So that's cool.
So we chose that interface for our product specifically for the flexibility because it means we can do digital and analog. And yes, including HDMI audio.
Okay.
It's a common question I get a lot with this particular product is, will it do HDMI audio? Yes, it will.
So these are not just capturing the video signal from your HDMI, they're also capturing the audio signal and pushing that into your computer as well.
Exactly. So that's kind of a little bit of who would use it and what they are. When would you use it? Again, that's kind of just like the why, and anytime you need video signal in there. Now, to break that down further, that could be a live stream like we're doing right now. We could be doing this show using a capture card from our camera and a laptop. Now, in our studio, we choose to use Pearl 2 for its mixing and switching capabilities as an all-in-one piece. But I could use this connected to a computer and take the output from either my camera directly or maybe a switcher or something else in order to have a similar setup.
Could I attach this, could I push a signal into this, say, with my game console?
Absolutely.
Or if I had like some other sort of video device that's,
Yeah. Essentially, again, anything that has a video output, right? And so whether that's DVI, VGA, HDMI, anything that has that video output. So we see customers in aerospace, healthcare, security, gamers, AV professionals. I mean, the list is endless, right? I mean, because it really is, when you start to think about it, there are video signals everywhere. You go into your doctor's office and you need to maybe get an ultrasound done. That ultrasound machine has a video output. If for some reason, maybe they needed to do a remote consultation with someone, they could use a device like this to capture that ultrasound signal, bring it into their computer, dial someone in Skype, and share that signal through Skype using this device.
Very interesting. Okay, so Skype. So once I connect this via USB into my computer, how does the computer interpret what is coming into it? How does the computer see this device? Do you need drivers or software? How does that work?
So the magic of the AVIO series is that on this side, the video input side, your camera or whatever computer video source you have thinks this is a monitor. We capture that signal, digitize it, and send it out over USB, where the host computer thinks it's a webcam.
Okay.
So this gets treated exactly like a webcam on your host computer. So any application, software that uses a webcam, like Skype, will see this, and therefore whatever your input is as a webcam.
There's actually a lot of software on my computer that you can use with a webcam. I think, I mean, the most obvious is Skype, probably, but
it's a common one.
I've used OBS, Open Broadcaster software, to do some game streaming, some recording as well. I've also seen, some video editing software where you can just bring your webcam directly into your video editing timeline if you want to.
Exactly. It's less common, but it's starting to become a bigger thing for sure. And we'll dive into some of those examples that you just mentioned. Actually, I have some of them ready. And why would you use this and where would you use it? I mean, it's, again, those things. You've got to get that video signal to record it, stream it, maybe just take still snapshots. I mean, there could be any number of reasons you need it. Where, with a device like this, being USB, small, portable, rugged, you can do it anywhere. They're powered from USB. So my laptop running on its battery right now will power this device. So I don't need to plug into the wall anywhere.
That's pretty cool. So I don't need to use batteries. I don't need to plug in. This thing can just literally grab and go, throw it in your backpack, take it with you.
Right.
I mean, the other thing that's nice about this being an external portable card is that, I can use this on any computer, not necessarily my desktop workstation, for example. I could go and use it if I'm going to a location or an event or somewhere where I know I'm going to need to try to record some video off a screen. I could just take this with me and I'm ready to go.
Exactly. And so we'll kind of talk about this guy a little later. But you'll see very sort of two distinct categories for capture cards. What's known as a UVC device, which the AVIO family is a part of, uses the UVC standard, which is the Universal Video Class. And that basically means it shows up just like a webcam does. So there's no drivers to install. It's plug and play with every major operating system that you're going to encounter on the market today. Windows, Mac OS, Chrome OS, Linux. All of these modern OSs have the UVC standard built in, which means I can take this to pretty much any computer I'm going to encounter, and it's going to be plug and play without having to install drivers and show up just like a webcam.
I mean, that's pretty huge. Sometimes, if you need to install a driver, that can really be impossible sometimes if you don't have an internet connection, or if you don't have a computer that gives you full access to
permissions, if you don't have security access, or maybe you know, you don't have that, or maybe there's compatibility issues. Maybe that particular computer, you don't have drivers for it. It's running some weird OS or whatever the case may be.
Or it's running Windows XP from 10 years ago.
Well, and that's a whole other story, because that doesn't support UVC technically either. But if you're still running Windows XP today, change your ways. So the flexibility, the portability, you're not tied to one machine. Nice and easy. Like, even if I forget my laptop and I show up at your cubicle, it doesn't matter. I'll plug it into your computer and we can get things done. That's what these are really all about.
I gotta say, in terms of portability, like, I'm pretty impressed by, I mean, for those of you watching, it might be hard to tell, but this feels like industrial strength steel almost.
Yeah,
like,
I think if I bang this on the desk, I'd hurt the desk, not the device. I mean,
yeah.
So for Epiphan, we make these out of tough metal. We don't use plastic enclosures.
Like, it's thick, and these end caps as well. Like, at first glance, I thought maybe this was like plastic, but
no,
this is rock hard. I'm pretty sure I could drive over this with my car, and it would.
I'm pretty sure you
survive.
can. Yeah, and we do that because we want to build to an industrial standard. We want these to be durable and to last. The same reason we use full-size connectors for things like the USB. There are some products on the market that use micro or mini connectors. They're not durable.
They don't last.
No, they'll fall apart. If you've ever had the micro connector fall apart on your cell phone, the same thing will happen to this, except probably faster. So we use full-size durable connectors for that. Same thing with the DVI, HDMI.
Yeah, full-size HDMI. That's nice to have those rugged connectors. So these are definitely built to last, built to be the only capture device that you ever need.
That's the idea. Yeah, exactly. So we've talked a little bit about the HD. The 4K, as the name would suggest, can capture up to 4K. So this is for someone who's using a 4K camera or less. I mean, you could use this with a full HD as well. It'll support lower resolutions, but up to 4K. And it has a native HDMI input port on it. So this can be great for the AV professional who needs to just grab from whatever camera that has HDMI output and get it into the computer. Or you mentioned earlier game consoles. This has been very popular for that usage as well, whether at full 4K or not. And again, plug it into whatever computer you're using. Now, on this show, we've talked a lot about Webcaster X2.
Yeah.
We've talked quite a bit about Pearl sometimes. And one of the biggest things that I encounter a lot is, why would someone choose something like Webcaster over a capture card? And there are a lot of pros and cons to both. I would personally like to say that there's no wrong answer. If you're going to be doing, let's say, 4K through this device and trying to live stream that to YouTube, you're going to have a pretty powerful laptop to do that. I mean, we're talking full quad-core i7 kind of thing, right? So you're combining the cost of this device to the cost of maybe a $1,500 to $2,000 laptop in order to really do it effectively. HD, you can get away with less, for sure, because it's just less to compress. But that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah.
If you already have that laptop, then adding a piece like this is nice and easy. But then there's the software component. These devices are just getting the signal into your computer. Then what?
Right. You have some decisions to make from there.
Right, and that's where the how comes into it.
So let's get into that in just a second, George. We've got a few questions coming in.
Sure.
Henry was asking, are there any power sequencing requirements for AVIO on USB?
No. Whether you plug in the input first, as you see I have here coming from the G20 and no USB plugged in at the moment, or whether I plug that in after, it doesn't really matter. And I'm actually going to plug it in right now. So right now you see there is an LED on the back of the AVIO. So Dan, you can see that there.
Yeah.
When I plug it in, you'll see that it only takes
it's already
less than half a second, and I now have a blue LED, right? That blue LED is telling me that this is being detected successfully by the computer in USB 3 mode.
Okay.
If this came up as green, I would only be getting USB 2 mode. The AVIO is backwards compatible with USB 2, but it will it will give you its full performance on USB 3. USB 2, it's going to be limited a little bit. There just isn't the bandwidth there. It's like trying to live stream 4K over a dial-up modem. It's just not going to happen.
Gotcha.
You'll get something at low frame rates.
So really, to get the most out of these USB capture devices, you really want to be using USB 3 as opposed to USB 2.
In this day and age, USB 3 should be a standard feature on pretty much any computer you've bought in the past 3 years. So now that I have it plugged in, I know it's being detected. I'm going to go and look at my first software example. Now my laptop's running Windows 10, so I'm going to look at this from the basics of the basics. So we've put up our picture-in-picture here in the stream, and you can see I'm getting my G20 capture through the AVIO, and the first software I'm using here is Windows Camera. It's built in to Windows 8 and Windows 10. Which means I don't even have to install anything. It's designed to work with your webcam. AVIO works just like a webcam. So if I want to do basic snapshots or basic video recording, I can do that in Windows Camera without installing anything at all.
And that's a free piece of software that comes with
Built into Windows 10.
Very nice.
So you know that can be a fantastic piece to do the basics. And all I have to do is, if it does select my internal webcam first, there's a little button that you can see my webcam there. I can just click it to rotate around to the AVIO. And I don't know how closely you guys could see that on the stream, but even just looking here within a couple of seconds in Windows Camera, the image quality difference, and this G20 is not fine-tuned for our studio environment, but the image quality difference between the webcam and the G20, to me, is night and day. And that's what AVIO can give you, is, as we've often talked about, stop using your mobile device for streaming. Stop using your webcam for this stuff. If you want to have a professional, high-quality image, use a real camera. How do you get a real camera into your computer? AVIO. So the next one I'm going to look at is a very popular one, and that is OBS. OBS is an open source, free piece of software that is used by a lot of people for a lot of purposes. It's extremely popular in the gaming market for doing YouTube and Twitch live streaming. The nice part is, again, it's built to use webcams and other captures and things like that. So it's very easy for me to add AVIO, as I did here, and capture directly from it. One nice part about OBS is that it is capable of capturing, streaming, and recording in up to 4K. So using something like AVIO 4K from a 4K camera, it's very easy. The nice part about this as well, and I didn't mention this earlier, is that AVIO has the capability of doing hardware downscaling or upscaling. So when I add it to a piece of software, I can choose what resolution I want to capture.
Very nice.
Whatever I request here, if it's different from the input, AVIO will scale it in hardware so that I'm not putting that scaling load on my computer.
That makes a lot of sense. So I was actually going to ask you, like, how does this there's no controls on these capture cards. There's no buttons or display or anything. How do I actually configure it to detect the resolution that I'm feeding it? Like, I could be feeding like a VGA resolution of an old projector, say, into this, but I could also be using like a PlayStation Pro 4K. How does it know?
Well, that's the beauty of digital signals, especially, is that everything is auto-negotiated. Epiphan capture cards in general are going to capture whatever signal you throw at it within its supported range. But for digital purposes, they're also programmed with an EDID. An EDID essentially is used on displays, monitors, TVs, as well as on capture cards to advertise what the display is capable of. So if you remember earlier, we said this basically looks like a monitor to your video source. So it reads the EDID programmed to AVIO, which says, hey, my native resolution is this, but you can really use any of these modes. Which ones do you prefer? The two devices auto-negotiate a native resolution and come to an agreement, and that's what they get.
Okay.
Some devices completely ignore EDIDs. That's fine, in which case we're going to capture whatever it's sending.
So the advantage there is, I guess, if I'm perhaps my resolution changes partway through, this device
Will
is
adapt.
going to adapt on the fly, right?
Exactly, yeah. Now, some software doesn't always adapt on the fly because it does automatic things, but again, the scaling built into AVIO can help counteract for that. Ideally, not too much switching involved, just because it can. Encoders don't really like that in terms of the software perspective, but it can adapt for sure. So one of the other ones I was going to look at is, what if OBS, which is an extremely powerful piece of software, or Wirecast is a great alternative of that that's very popular in the professional circles. What if that's a little bit too cumbersome for someone who's just starting out, getting a little bit inexperienced? Well, the good news is, again, because I can do things just like a webcam, I could actually do, let's say, a Facebook live stream directly in my browser without anything else.
Really?
So I have Facebook loaded up here in my web browser. As part of the sharing options, there's live video, right? If I click on that, I'm using Chrome in this case, but Chrome will support webcams.
Look at that.
So as soon as I load it up, AVIO is my selected webcam in the Chrome settings, and I could do a live stream from the G20 straight to Facebook Live, or basically anything else that'll do live in a web browser, straight from that way, without the need for OBS or Wirecast or these other things. So simplicity, flexibility, it's kind of all there.
That's extremely easy. I mean, all you had to do was plug it in,
Yeah.
go to Facebook as usual, write in your
Exactly.
post,
And
click,
I could just
click
go live.
stream, and you're going live right away.
And you'll notice here in the settings, not only do I have my camera setting, but I also have my audio setting. So if I have a different audio source, I could choose that. Or in this case, you can see that we're getting audio from the G20 through the AVIO and using its built-in microphones.
That's very nice. So if you wanted to use the high quality microphone right in your camera,
Exactly.
you could do that.
Yeah, but maybe I'm wearing a headset and I want to use that's plugged into USB or the mic jack on the laptop. I could select that audio device alternatively. So again, a lot of flexibility in the way that AVIO shows up as a video device and an audio device for two different selections.
That's pretty cool.
So there are some
I like
other
that.
pieces out there. I won't talk too much about them, but one I stumbled across the other day that a customer actually mentioned to me is Lightstream, golightstream.com. They're basically trying to build a cloud-based version of what OBS does, which is interesting. It's really fascinating to me, and they're still developing some of it. But it essentially, you can create layers and templates and all this other kind of stuff. You can go live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Mixer, and it's cloud-based.
That's cool.
There's a bunch of cool stuff you can do with this. I won't go too deep into it, but there's a bunch of cool stuff you can do. Their service is currently limited to 720p. I've chatted with some of the guys there, and they will have 1080p at some point, but for now.
So why might you choose something like Lightstream instead of OBS?
Well, again, right now Lightstream is free and it's cloud-based, so I don't have to install anything on my computer.
Nice.
They've also added in some other interesting things. It's honestly very similar in sort of maybe the end goal, but they've added something where I could add a different video source from a small desktop app that you can install so that your computer could install that app, do a screen share or computer share from yours, but I could ingest it into my stream here
Nice.
and run it through the cloud. So you can actually bring essentially multiple endpoints into one cloud, mix and switch. So it's kind of a cool thing.
Yeah. That's
kind
cool.
of a
So
cool
I
thing.
could have my video capture card. You could have
Right.
yours. We both got our good cameras, and then we
I could do a
combine our
side-by-side.
signals on in the cloud and do a side by side show.
Exactly.
It's pretty neat.
So there's some cool stuff that they're working on. So no affiliation there. I'm not plugging them. It's just a cool one I've stumbled across. So
Now we had a question here that someone has answered, but I'll just ask you as well,
Sure.
George. Paride Dominici, I hope I'm saying your name correctly, was asking, can you connect more than one of these at a time to have multiple cameras?
That's a great question, and the answer is depends. that's not maybe not the most accurate answer, but really it depends on the host computer. AVIO does not do any compression on the device itself. As such, it can use most or all of the USB bandwidth available. If I tried to run two devices on the same USB hub or host controller, they're going to fight for a share of that bandwidth.
Right.
And very likely one of them is not going to give me full performance.
So, I mean, I've seen the same thing when I try to have multiple external hard drives running off the same hub. I'm not going to get the full speed of my file transfer.
Your
if
write
I'm,
speeds come down.
so
exactly.
So really you want to make sure that if you are going to try to use more than one video capture card at the same time, to run them off of different USB host controllers on your machine. For
If
example,
possible.
like you've got USB ports on both sides.
Yeah.
Maybe run one off of your left side USB and one off of your right side USB?
Yeah, so laptops can be particularly tricky with that because you don't really have a lot of options. But as a general rule of thumb, if your laptop has USB ports on opposite sides, chances are they're going to be broken up a little bit. So in my case, and I have done it on this one, this is an older Asus ZenBook Ultrabook. I have run 2 AVIO HDs. I don't think I'd be able to really do it with 4K at full 4K, but with 1080p and with either device, running 2 at the same time and getting 30 FPS at least. So 60 might be pushing it, but 30. Desktops usually have multiple USB controllers, so there's going to be a better bet there. So yeah, it depends.
But you probably shouldn't be trying to run multiple of these off of like a US external hub, a USB hub?
No, because then you're funneling it all into one connection, and that's going to conflict. So yeah, you definitely want to try and break them up.
Dedicated
so
USB ports.
Yes. So is it possible? Yes. Is it always feasible for everyone's computer? Not always, no.
Okay.
So you definitely got to look at the host machine. So the last example I wanted to just quickly talk about is teleconferencing. So we mentioned Skype earlier. Right now I just pulled up a Google Hangouts. And again, same rules apply. It's in a browser. I've selected AVIO as my webcam, and there's Google Hangouts, right?
We're hanging out.
You know, you can use Google Hangouts to do Hangouts on air with YouTube if you want to do a live stream that way with multiple participants. I know that's very popular for a lot of the vloggers these days. So this gives you those abilities, and again, you know, or maybe I just need a teleconference. Maybe I actually need to talk to people. You know, we can bring in maybe a PTZ camera with HDMI, or a higher quality camera with a wider shot of the room.
I mean, even just being able to have, like, on this camera, we've got like an optical zoom.
Yeah.
Webcams don't have that.
Right.
Right? Just
but
having
also being able to fine tune it. Like right now, we mentioned this one's not fine tuned for our lighting in here, but I can adjust aperture.
Like
you know,
I can go in here and mess with the
balance.
white balance a little bit. Like, let's try changing it just for the fun of it, but we'll go to like something else there. Our white balance a bit more adjusted. I'd want to dial it in, obviously, for my lighting
you can
conditions.
do that on a real camera.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's some good stuff there, and obviously manual focus, right? That can play a big role too. So that's pretty much my quick software examples. And again, to summarize that, it's anything that can use a webcam, AVIO will work. So the last one I wanted to talk about very quickly.
Just quickly, George, before we dive into that, we have another question here from Sarah. Sarah's asking, can you use your laptop as the source to transfer to another laptop?
Yes. Yeah, that's an easy one to say yes. And again, any of the video signals that HDMI, DVI, VGA, with the given devices, it doesn't have to be a camera. Anything that'll output those signals, AVIO is going to capture that. So if you need VGA, AVIO HD. If it's just HDMI or DVI, AVIO 4K or AVIO HD, depending on the resolution that you might want to capture.
So you just plug your HDMI out, just like plugging in a monitor really to your laptop, right?
Yep.
Into this USB, into the second laptop.
Yep. Boom.
You're transferring one laptop screen to the other.
Exactly.
That's pretty straightforward.
So the other one in our line I wanted to mention, AVIO is certainly more flexible for the bulk of people out there. But for those of you who might be on the more higher end industrial scale, then we also have what we often refer to as our signature series, our DVI to USB 3 and SDI to USB 3. On the surface, they look very similar. They're the same size, similar ports. Internally, they are different, and the way they integrate to your computer is different. With something like DVI to USB 3, it is not a UVC device, so you do have to install drivers onto the system. There are advantages to that. First is that you're not restricted by what the UVC standard has defined for color spaces and stuff like that. You're also not restricted by common resolutions that UVC expects. So if you have maybe a really odd, non-standard, custom timings, really weird VGA signal, this is going to be the better bet, because you can fine-tune this through the drivers to do virtually anything, full color space, pixel perfect, lossless capture, you know. So there are people, especially in the high-end industrial or medical side, that this is the better choice for them. And part of our drivers, we include a simple capture application as well.
So something like this is for, like, if you're like a system integrator or you need to capture some strange video signal from a very customized device, you can fine-tune every detail of how this works.
We include an SDK that's available for our drivers so that you can build your own application to integrate with the drivers. You can obviously build your own application to leverage UVC as well, but you're still restricted by the UVC standard, which is great, but it is intended for webcams. So you'll typically see color spaces like 422 and 420 on these. Whereas with this, I could do full RGB 24. So, you know, if that was important to me, then I have to make that choice.
But let's be frank, like for most people, if they just need an easy way to record a video signal, something like the AVIO 4K or the AVIO HD is gonna work in 99% of cases.
I would think so, and that's one of the reasons why we created AVIO HD. This is a much more traditional product for us, that we've always had devices like this, and we recognize that, you know, the UVC standard opens it up to a lot more people for flexibility and usability.
And we have another question here from Henry. Henry's asking, does capturing all of this data heat up the AVIO's metal case?
It will be warm, but the case is designed to act as a heatsink. So if it does get warm, that's normal, and that's okay. That's what it's supposed to do.
I noticed there are some vents here to help,
on the 4K,
help ventilate it. And I got to say, I was testing this a little earlier. I did maybe feel it warm up a degree or two, but it wasn't anything too significant.
No, I mean, your computer's going to be getting just as warm trying to do all that encoding. So, but no, it's
relatively low power consumption. I mean, it's running off of a USB port, right?
Exactly. So. Yeah, it's running off 5 volts, so it's not going to be huge.
Okay.
But I think that covers it. But really, if you guys have any questions about that, continue to put them into chat while we're still on the air. But check out our forums if you do have more questions. Post in there, and happy to answer them there. Send us an email, jump on live chat on our website. Myself and my team in support, we're happy to address those. Share what your use case might be, and we can help you figure out which one of the models would be the best fit.
So if you were I was gonna ask you to sort of summarize I was just doing a Google search before we came on this show for USB capture cards, and it seems like there's quite a few options as a consumer when you go to buy a USB capture card. What makes these AVIO capture cards unique? What is going to be the reason that you'd choose this over maybe something else?
So I think we kind of touched on most of those points earlier. We have focused around trying to build flexible, durable products. You know, we want to make sure this is something that's going to last. It's going to be flexible for changing needs. And also something that, you know, this is a premium product. It's not, are there less expensive capture cards out there? Yeah, but there's also less expensive cars than, you know, X. So, you know, you have to make the decision on what fits your actual needs. For us, we build this from a hardware perspective to serve the industrial customer. Even if you aren't, you know this is built to that standard.
It's built to last.
Exactly. I could throw this across the room. It's going to survive.
This could last your lifetime for capturing HD.
If I bought a cheaper capture card that's in a plastic casing and I drop it on the floor and it breaks, well, then maybe I buy a new one every 6 months.
Or maybe it's using like cheaper quality ports that are going to wear out after a couple of years. This is not going to do that.
Right. And so that's a big part of it. Again, the flexibility, we've tried to make sure that the inputs are as flexible as possible. There are products out there that are focused on just camera-centric resolutions like 720 and 1080. With our capture cards, we've tried to make sure that they are very widely compatible across whatever you want to throw at it. So, you know, that can be a differentiator as well.
I got to say, it's also nice knowing that with these AVIO capture cards that I can just plug and play. No software, no drivers. I've got 2 cables to plug in, no power to plug in. It's pretty simple.
Yeah, yeah, and I think we've had a number of people do reviews on these. There's lots of YouTube guys that have done reviews on these, and I think every single one I've watched for my own curiosity, one of the takeaways of just about everybody has been it just works, and that's the intention. Try to avoid any conflicts with different setups. Try to make it as universal, as easy to use, simple, straightforward. Get it done. Just works.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what most people are probably looking for when they're
Absolutely.
trying to search a capture card. Is you want something that's just going to be reliable and just work for you. It's not like you're looking for necessarily all kinds of fancy features and software. You just need to get that signal in, right? And then from what you do with it from there is up to you.
Right, and some of those examples I went through from a software perspective, there's a software that's going to fit your level, right? Whether it's complex things like Wirecast and OBS, whether it's simplicity like Windows Camera or doing a Facebook stream in your browser, right? There's a level of software to fine-tune to your level as well. This just gets you that magic, bridging between here and here.
Great. Well, I think we've really covered that in depth, so thanks for that, George. Should let you guys know, thank you so much for interacting with us in chat today. It's been great. As always, you can always ask us questions, or if you maybe a little more shy, you can email us live@epiphan.com. Also, once again, just remind you to check our community forum, epiphan.com/forum. It's a great place to get all the latest information about Epiphan products, but also if you want to share your live streams and if you want to be a part of the video capture and streaming community that we're building, we'd be happy to see you there.
Yeah.
And as always, we're going to be here every single Thursday afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern.
What do we have next week?
Next week we have, well, there's a couple different topics. We're not going to necessarily reveal them yet, but we will be talking again about some live streaming related topics. We haven't really fully figured that out yet, which we're going to be diving into. We have a few things that we're working on, so stay tuned for that. I know in the near future we're going to be talking about Vimeo Live. We're going to be talking about doing multi-streaming, so if you want to stream to Facebook and YouTube at the same time, how do you do that? So those are a few of the topics in the coming weeks. As always, if you have any topics you'd like us to cover, don't be shy. We'll talk about what you want us to talk about. So if there's something you want to learn about or something you want to understand better, let us know and we'll be happy to cover it on the show.
Absolutely.
Anything else?
I think that covers it. As Dan said, throw us your questions and we're happy to answer them.
Okay, so let's wrap it up there. Thanks so much for joining us and we'll see you again. Until next week, I'm Dan.
I'm George.
So long.
Bye now.